A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a scholar of the law, tested him by asking, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments." The gospel of the Lord.
My brothers and sisters, it's good to be home. I heard there was some debacle and failings along the way, but wasn't much I could do about that, so I humbly apologize for that. So I hear that one weekend, the first weekend that I was gone, there was some confusion. I had set everything up with the priests. I had talked with them. Everything was fine. And they ended up, our office got involved. They ended up talking to each other. Nobody mentioned any dates, and there was a whole lot of confusion that resulted because of it. I thought I had everything put in place, so one Sunday morning, the first Sunday morning when I was not here, I heard you had about a 28-minute mass. You had a priest that was able to come in and because he was on his way to another parish to say mass, so he came in, he did one of those daily masses with a 2-minute homily. The Lord loves you and you love the Lord or whatever, and that's it, So, well, okay. But, that's not my style, so we're going to be here just a little bit longer than 2 minutes and probably just a little bit longer than 28 minutes. So we'll get back to normal anyways. I want to talk a little bit about something today that most people really are not clued into what it really is. I want to talk about the history and the roots of Halloween. It usually brings a lot of responses from people, and people might even say to me, "Father, there's no need, that's not why I go to church to hear about that," or so, and I can perfectly understand that. We come to church to hear the Word of God and hear the gospel proclaimed and to try to understand it, to love the Lord our God with your whole heart, soul, and mind and being. Certainly, though, leaves room that we explain and understand what Halloween is, because Halloween is deeply rooted in superstition. Now, in the Western Hemisphere, particularly in our country, but not just our country, Halloween is a big thing. It's a big deal. Christians, Catholics, atheists, anybody, it doesn't matter, participates in this. But nobody seems to know really what it is. We just do it. We do it because everybody else is doing it. It is the single highest spending day of the year in the United States, what we call a plastic spending day, when people put stuff on their credit card. Outside of Christmas and Easter, money for candy and costumes and those sorts of things. And in France, interestingly enough, they say the French literally have lost their faith. Out of the French people, 5% of the people go to church in France. And those 5% no longer believe in the Eucharist. Well, guess what their number one feast day is? Halloween. Halloween. If there is no God, there's a void. And the devil's very good and very clever with what he does. He would take a superstitious practice and put it in its place, and people who are ignorant don't know any better. So I want to explain to you a little bit of what Halloween is. Halloween traditions go back 4,000 years. It goes back to a time of the Druids. I think most of us probably in some way or another have heard of the Druids in our lives. It was a pagan culture, a pagan practice, pagan rituals, and so on. They worshiped the god called the god of Samhain, Sanheim, in Ireland. It started out as a small group, and it began to grow and grow and grow and grow. And before you knew it, it was all over Ireland. It became very much a part of what it meant to be Irish, to be a Druid. And one of their custom beliefs was that on October 31st, the barrier between the supernatural world and the natural world broke down. And the spirits of the netherworld were allowed to roam the earth. And if you had offended someone, or a spirit is angry at you, or you've hurt someone, or somebody that has died that you've done something wrong to, this is the day they're going to come after you. So people put on costumes to fool the bad spirits. And then as time went on, they began to put out food to appease the spirits. They began to put out lights to draw the good spirits. Now, the Romans, in the 1st century A.D., absolutely hated the Druids. Even though the Romans themselves were pagans, they absolutely disliked the Druids. So the emperor gave an order to kill all the Druids, their priests, and anybody who belongs to that clan. And they tried to stamp out the Druids. They were successful to a certain degree, but they were not able to completely stamp it out because it was too deeply ingrained in the culture of the Irish people and now in the Roman Empire by many, many people. So what happened, many people went underground. Some of them went back to Ireland. Some went underground and hid. And basically the Druids continued their practices in secret. And they continued. And after the Roman Empire collapsed, the Druids came back to the surface and started all over again. That in the beginning of the 9th century, the Pope realized that this was such a difficulty and such a problem that he had to put something in place of these superstitious practices and superstitious beliefs of the Druids. So he did something which we now celebrate, which now for us is a holy day of obligation. He put into place honoring the saints. And he recommended to people that they would get dressed up in the costumes of the saints. And they would put on plays in small towns and big towns and in church halls and so on and so on. And little children should be able to tell the story of the saint that they are dressed up as. He wanted to draw something good out of a negative pagan practice. So now we have All Saints' Day, which used to be celebrated May 1st. Now, of course, it is on November 1st. Which for us now is a holy day of obligation to just remember that, because I'll mention it again at the end of the Mass. So You'll already know it. Wednesday is a holy day of obligation. Now, the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches very clearly that we are not allowed to participate in any superstitious practices of any sort, of any kind. Horoscopes, tarot cards, Ouija boards, you name it, whatever. Pagan practices, superstitious practices, at any level. But we do. We do. And when the potato famine took place in Ireland in the 1800s, the Irish brought with them the custom of their practices of the Druid worship. It came into New England. And there it started first with an idea, they called it the Harvest Festival, which in some places, believe it or not, it's still called the Harvest Festival. That's why you still see pumpkins and stalks of corns and other things and so on and so on. But its practices are in dark shadows. Its reality is in superstition. And now we have bought into it as a culture. Not just us, but other countries as well. We dress up, our children, and people say, well, Father, it's so innocent, it's no big deal. The kids just have fun. That's not the point. The point of it being is we don't get dressed up to hide ourselves from evil spirits. People don't get dressed up as saints. Unless you have a Catholic school, then they have a play, or the kids are allowed to wear costumes for that day of the saints, which I know many Catholic schools do, but a lot of children still go out and get dressed up in these grotesque costumes. And they go out knocking on people's door, trick or treat. And if you didn't give something, of course, there was a consequence to it. And it could be anything. Today it isn't so much. Kids don't really care too much about, as long as they get their candy, even if they don't get anything, well, they just go to the next person and so on and so on. But it is a superstitious practice to dress up our children in costumes to go knocking on people's doors. That is something that was begun with the Irish traditions here. People were very poor. The Harvest Festival was celebrated. So they kind of mixed together their Druid forms of worship with the Harvest Festival. They used to have big cookouts, family gatherings, and so on. But as people began to move into the cities and move closer to each other, all of that changed. And they went back to the form of the Druid worship of putting on costumes and knocking on people's door and begging for things, which is more of a modern invention than part of the Druid practices of the ancient ages. But getting dressed up in costumes certainly is something which is rooted in 4,000 years of pagan traditions. And I tell you this simply because you may not even realize this. October 31st is the high feast day of those who do not worship God. They worship Lucifer. It is a feast day of the Luciferians around the world. I had a friend of mine who worked for the park police in Washington, D.C. And she told me that every year they reserved a particular spot in a particular park, and they came by the thousands from around the world, all dressed in black, doing satanic rituals and dances to invoke Lucifer. And she told me that one night she went over there because she knew exactly where they were going to be. She went over there as the sun set, and she sprinkled holy water all over the place. And then she sat up on a hill and she watched them as they did their ritualistic practices. She said she's a wonderfully practicing Catholic, very, very devout. She said it was a very grotesque thing to watch, to know full well what they were doing. They weren't invoking God. As we have Easter, of course, and Christmas time for us is our high feast day. October 31st is no longer for us so much a feast day of the harvest, but it's now the high feast day of the Luciferians, and has been for many, many centuries. Why is it that we participate in this practice, getting dressed up in costumes and sending our kids out knocking on people's door? And I know what people are going to say. I've heard it 1,000 times. Oh, Father, it's harmless. The kids don't know. It's innocent. It's just fun. Why not just go out and buy them some candy anyways, because we spend a lot of money on that day already. Have an All Saints party. Invite the kids to get dressed up in saints, to be able to tell the stories of the saints. But we are not allowed to participate in superstitious practices. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is simply because most Christians, Catholic Christian, it doesn't matter what denomination, have no clue what they're participating in. Why would we in any way, shape, or form participate in this kind of thing? That's a feast day of the Luciferians. I don't get it. It's because we don't know it. I'm not here to scare people. You have to make up your own decisions in your own mind. I only have to tell you the reality of the truth. And I remember throughout the years, even when I was in the seminary, I would ask, what exactly is Halloween? Of course, we didn't practice it in the seminary, but I would ask, because people were practicing Halloween, I said, what exactly is it? And I could never find an answer. Until a youth group that I was participating in one day, a couple of weeks before Halloween, asked me. And they said, Ron, can you tell us about Halloween? I said, no, I can't. But I'll tell you what, I'll find the answer for you. So I went to a library, my library at school. I began to look up the history of Halloween, its practices, where it comes from, what it's rooted in, and I was totally shocked. I was a kid once too. I knocked on people's doors. I was shocked by what I read. So I told the youth group exactly what I had learned. And then some years later, I came across an article written in a magazine called The Modern Harvest or something to that effect. And there was a lady who was an atheist who had written a 10-page article on the practices of Halloween. Now, she had no particular belief in God or the devil or anything, but she gave the true history of Halloween, and which surprised me, but she did. She gave all the history of how it was practiced throughout the ages, how the Romans tried to stamp it out, how the Catholic Church tried to reform it and try to make something better out of it. But the Druid worship was never able to be completely stamped out. If you go to Ireland today, there are still Druids. There's still Druids in the United States if you go to New England. It's a pagan practice. The custom of getting dressed up in costumes and so on, and fooling the evil spirits and so on, and carving pumpkins and things and all of that is all part of a superstitious practice which we are not allowed, we're not supposed to participate in. Now that you know You certainly have to make your own choices, and like I said, I'm not here to beat you upside the head. I'm not here to judge you. It's not my task. I am a truth bearer. I bring you the reality of the fact of what this day is. Maybe you already knew it, maybe you didn't. But now you know. Kids are probably going to come to your door and knock on your door, and maybe you'll panic, maybe you won't, maybe you just hand them some candy, and in reality probably isn't much of an issue in that sense. But as Catholics, we shouldn't be dressing our children up as ghosts and goblins and sending them out to knock on people's doors. To dress up as saints and have saints' parties. If we had a Catholic school here, I certainly would encourage the school to do it, so we could do it the correct way. And the custom and the practice basically was, when they began this in the 800s, was that the church doors were open all night long. There was Eucharistic adoration. There was masses in the evening. There was masses at midnight. There was masses in the morning, and so on and so on. A priest could say a mass whatever time he wanted to. It didn't matter. And the idea basically was, since it was a feast day of the Luciferians, we were going to do the opposite. We were going to worship our God, Jesus Christ, who's truly present, of course, Eucharistically at Mass. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. So if you want to get mad at me, that's fine. You won't be the first, and you probably won't be the last. I've had letters written to the bishop. I've had the bishop call me into the office and literally jump across the desk. Say, Father, you can't say that. I said, hold on a minute, Archbishop. I can say that because that's the fact. That's the historical fact. I had a copy of the article of the magazine from this atheist, and I said, here, take a look at this. And he said to me, he said, okay. He said, then find a better way to explain it, but don't scare people. I'm not here to scare you. And I hope you're not scared. I'm here to tell you the reality of the fact that we participate in something which we shouldn't. In reality, what we ought to be doing is exactly what the gospel tells us today. Love the Lord thy God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and being, your neighbor as yourself. Not to participate in superstitious practices.